So if you're intermittent fasting and you have and you're exercising and you have healthy fasting insulin score, then you can have 20 to 50 carbs in one meal, right? That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot, right? But you're insulin sensitive, right? If you're not, if you're using the ketogenic diet to try to burn body fat, improve insulin sensitivity, then I would cut it down as low as comfortable. Stay within 10 to 20 total carbs.
Yeah, I'd say less 10, 15 max in one meal, and especially if you're ill, if you're on, diabetic or pre-diabetic, and doing it for that reason, then it's really important.
So cut it. Okay.
Nice.
So it depends, right? So if you're really trying to accomplish something, you cut it down to 10, right? As a sports nutritionist, I'm not an advocate of a zero carb diet. I think that there's nutrients and calories are connected in food, and so you need fibrous carbohydrate, just as long as it's below threshold, whatever that threshold is.
Oh, and just a quick one. One good one for you guys who are escaping. Go to dietdoctor.com. He has all this stuff on there. Very well done. He has all the data. He says if you're going to eat fruit, low carb, high carb. If you're going to have vegetables, low carb, high carb. And it's really a great, and he has menu plans and all that kind of stuff. So it's a good way to get on track just to get started.
Berries and low calorie citrus. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I have trying to research the metformin issue. My A1C has come from 7.9 down to 4.9.
Amen to that.
And I do like 3-day fasts. I've been intermittent fasting without realizing it, because it was just one meal a day, because I was told that you just eat when you're hungry. So I've been doing that. But I'm wondering if when I do the longer fasts, my blood sugar goes really, really low. I don't take the metformin. But then I've read also that in taking the metformin, if you take it, that it has a prophylactic for Alzheimer's. And one of my main reasons for wanting to fast and stay low carb is because there's severe Alzheimer's in my family with my father and his mother. So I'm at a point now, do I need to keep taking that metformin when I'm not fasting? Or
You may want to consider, there's some supplements like berberine that increases insulin sensitivity where you're not taking a drug all the time. There's some data showing that that's beneficial. If your A1C is running at 4.9, that's pretty dang good. Especially if you're on a low carb diet and you're doing what you're doing, and it's really just monitoring to see what your sugar's doing, what you're doing, and those kind of things. With regard to metformin being protective for a lot of cancers, the whole point is you're making your body sensitive to insulin. That's what you're doing with your diet. That's what we're doing with exercise. So why do I need to take a drug when I can do it lifestyle-wise? This is the point we're making to people. The biggest thing you can do to decrease your risk of cardiovascular disease, dementia. Dementia, as you know, is called type 3 diabetes. If you make your body sensitive to insulin, your brain gets sensitive to insulin. If you're running on ketones, your brain's happy to run on ketones. We have data. There's some unbelievable podcasts coming on. I mean, I'm blown away as a doctor because there's a guy named Christian Assad who's an awesome cardiologist who's taking people with heart failure that are going on hospice because they're such a disaster. They're on 5 different diuretics. They have all these things. They can't get them under control. He sat down with the guy and said, this is off-label, because the guy said, make peace. I mean, your ejection fraction is 10%, should be 65. Make peace. The guy says, there's nothing else I can do. And he said, well, you're on 7 years of insulin twice a day. You're on all these. He said, if you go keto, maybe it will help. This guy is now feels better than he has in 20 years. He's out exercising. All of his swelling in his feet are gone because he dropped his insulin down. Now he's taking like 5 units of insulin a day or something ridiculous instead of being 140. So, what you're doing is going to prevent it more than any drug you take, right? We don't have a metformin receptor in our brain that says you need more metformin, right? We say, look, we got to make our body sensitive to insulin. What we're showing is the only diabetes drugs that have decreased cardiovascular disease, it's because they decrease insulin levels. Because one called Invokana, you pee out a lot of sugar. There's a ton of problems with getting urinary infections. All it's doing is all the other drugs just shove it into your tissues. And this is just now there's not letting it exit the body. It's the only way you can.
What's the lowest you've measured your blood sugar? You said it went low.
I don't mean, I have to bring my thing to tell you, but I think it went like.
You feel bad though. You subjectively know, oh, my blood sugar's low. I feel
I'll
sick.
tell you, when after exercising, I I had a couple of times where I was lightheaded,
Mm-hmm.
but it went away quickly. And I know salt, I do the salt, yeah. But I'll bring my blood sugar.
The other thing to track
I
is
think it was like in 69 or
yeah,
something.
that's pretty low. But the thing to track is if it stays down.
It
right?
comes back
If
up. It doesn't stay there. It comes back up.
That's good.
Yeah. So,
And after exercise,
but-
you're soaking up all that sugar, and your muscle's going to drop a little bit transient, and then it'll come back up. And the other thing that confuses a lot of people, and I see it clinically, is I have diabetics who go on a low-carb keto diet, and myself. If I check my sugars first thing in the morning, it's going to be higher than it is 2 hours later, especially if I'm fasting, because you have stress hormones at night, all these things that bump up the sugar. So people say, this isn't working, it's crazy, I'm not doing it anymore. You might have experienced the dawn effect. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you, because I will, I eat between 12 and 6, and I will take my metformin in the morning, when it's at a certain thing. But it might just be me. It seems like it gets higher after I take the pill. I don't know if it's my body and it's, it's just that
Sometimes you
time
get
of the
stress
day.
effect for a couple hours after you get up in the morning, but a lot of times that will just drop down, and then you check your A1C and it's improving, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
I don't care what your sugar is in the morning fasting necessarily. I don't think it's a great marker for a lot of us because you have stress hormones and you have sugar. It happens. We have diabetics that have super high sugars in the morning. So we say, oh, your sugars are high. Let's go up on your insulin at night. Keep going up on the insulin. The sugars get higher. Go up more, higher, 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 higher. Because we're knocking the sugars down so low in the middle of the night, the body says, oh my gosh, liver, give up all that sugar, right? So now we have high sugars, but we're having low sugars in the middle of the night. So you come down their insulin, everything gets better.
My MPH was 51 before I went to bed. That's how much I would take.
Yeah.
And I'm on the Zip.
Wow. That's a miracle right there. We don't see that, right? That's a miracle. That's a huge miracle.
I just
That's a
wanted
good
to ask
testimony.
metformin.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am?
When you intermittent fast, can you drink water?
Oh, you bet. Yeah,
Sunday.
it's just calorie free.
Lots of it.
Yeah, you can have
Dry
you can have
fast
tea,
or
coffee,
dry fast or
whatever like
dangerous?
that. And
Dry fast.
None of us recommend that. Most people do bone broth to start with, so you have something because we want to have something. And then once you do it for like, I don't need to deal with bone broth or whatever. But
Black
there's
coffee,
collagen. There's a lot of
tea.
beneficial things. And, yeah.
Calorie free. Yes, sir.
I had a question. It seemed like all of this on your slides there that started with the food pyramid is the community, and I mean the nationwide community, going to do anything to address that problem? Because we're teaching our children that this is the way to do it, and it's a disaster. Is there any kind of a movement to try and get
Nutrition
that
Coalition.
addressed?
Yeah, Nutrition Coalition, they're actually working on that. They're saying, look guys, the guidelines are wrong. When you look at the guidelines, they were based on zero science. It was an opinion. These guys sat around going, yeah, we think, and just like when you'll see the rankings for diets. All these people sit in a room and they go, which one do you think is the best? I think this one's the best. I don't like keto. I like that. Jillian Michaels just came out from Biggest Loser. If you want to talk about the Biggest Loser, right? They had a 98% failure rate. One person had success long term, gastric bypass, right? And low carb diet. Every single one, and it wasn't because the person went home and got lazy, because they went home and went, well, they were working out 7 hours a day. No one does that.
So,
it's not natural. You're not going to work out 7 hours a day. You don't have time for that. We're trying to get people to do 10 minutes. And so they went back, and their average metabolic rate has dropped by 400 to 800 calories per day. So they're burning 800 calories less a day than someone who is just a regular person. And they're worse off because their metabolic rate got messed
So
up.
to answer your question, the Nutrition Coalition, it started in South Africa?
No, that's Nina Teicholz. She talked about her book, The Big Fat Surprise.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
So
They're getting a group together. Yeah.
So they're getting a group together, plus Low Carb USA, their mission is to spread the word and to start communities like this in every city in America.
Yeah, and that's a problem. The problem is, when I started doing this, that's why I called Jeff. I said, look, this is helping people. But I don't have anyone to send my patients. I can't sit there and educate you for like this. I can't do this in my practice all day. So I say that's why I started the podcast too, because we reach more people. Diet Doctor, he's reaching millions of people now. And people are getting it. They're having a huge turnaround in those countries. So I think it's a grassroots where you have to say, look at the data, and then see what you want to do with your patients, right? It took me a step to say, it's working for me, but do I want to do it with my patients? Troy Kalajian, you see his success. He's one of the smartest doctors I know, a great person. Great success. Ted Naiman. You could go down the list of people. Dr. Gerber in Denver. Ivor Cummins, who's doing a lot for cardiovascular. What we're doing is, what's amazing about Low Carb USA and these kind of conferences, psychiatrists, bipolar disorder, anxiety, seizures, which is the longest use for ketogenic diet.
Oncologists.
Anxiety, depression, sleep, oncology, there's tons of stuff in oncology coming with fasting, And you look at the natural state, when we're dying, generally, we go into ketosis. We stop eating. We go into ketosis. People are peaceful. Then they say, well, and I've seen it so many times in my career, someone's dying, then they wake up and go, oh, make sure you pay the mortgage, do this, do this. And I'm like, damn, I talked for a week. Now all of a sudden they're clear. They're going into ketosis a lot of those times. Babies are in ketosis. It's a natural state. It's not, it's not, you look back at the fathers of medicine. What did they do? Dr. Osler, who's the godfather of medicine, they put people in the hospital when they had diabetes, cut their cards off. It's all documented. I have all the copies of his book. And I have his book in my office. And in the 1800s, and there's like, cut down the carbs. They couldn't do blood tests, so they just checked the urine. As soon as they stopped peeing sugar, they said, okay, stay at this level of carbs. That's what they did. Then we got insulin in 1921, standard of care, give insulin to everyone. Because insulin will lower the sugars, and the sugars get better, but we're killing the patient. But the sugars look great. That's like saying, your house looks great, but you have termites all through your structure. Not good.
Can I just say something about the dietary guidelines? Because, Nina and Sarah Hallberg and those people are working tirelessly to try and work in DC with the government to get these guidelines changed. But there is so much money behind supporting the current guidelines that who knows how long it's going to take. I did a talk at that conference in San Francisco, and this whole initiative that we've got to establish a standard of care for doctors to prescribe carbohydrate restriction for therapeutic benefits, I think is the way. We need to have more doctors that get it like this.
Yes.
So that I'd said, because we can't wait for those guidelines to change. Who knows? It could be 50 years. It could be 100 years before we eventually get it all changed.
Yeah. Like smoking, the first case of cancer was when they had definitive, was 50 years before they made a change.
We can't allow our doctors to wait for those guidelines to change before they change their standard of care.
Because the mortality rate is out of control,
Yeah,
and
we
the state of
kind of-
healthcare.
So we're attacking it from both sides. We are trying to train the doctors who are prepared to listen, and then we've got Nina and the people, the politicians that are trying to fight it in DC.
The governmental document that comes out every 5 years is Dietary Guidelines for Americans. The next one due out is 2020, and this is the year that they finally make edits. So for them to even hold an audience with low carb advocates is hopeful. But it's a document that stands for 5 years. So right now we're still on the 2015 guidelines, and so people in the community are submitting to the editors of this document to hopefully make a change. You had a question back there.
Yes, I wanted to know if sweeteners such as stevia or xylitol is allowed in the keto diet.
Good question.
It's. I wish we could say yes or no. I think it's really, we look at it as look, if you're eating tons of sugar, switch over if you can, right? I put xylitol in my coffee sometimes, but it's a graded approach. Because our point, what people say is you take that and it doesn't raise your sugar. True. But what's it doing to your insulin levels? Because you taste sweet. For instance, I had an episode with a good friend of mine. We were talking about it. But the first time when I started doing low carb, I was super low carb for a long time. Then one day I said, I was post-call, I was kind of tired. I said, I'm going to have a Diet Coke. I hadn't had a Diet Coke in probably 2 months. Had a Diet Coke, and I was starving after. All I wanted to do was eat. Right? I'm like, this is weird. I'm thinking, So I called my friend who knows low carb, and I said, hey, it's weird. I'm having all this stuff. He said, what time did you drink your Diet Coke today? I said, what do you mean? So you had a Diet Coke, didn't you? I said, I did. Who told you? He said, because what you did is you tricked your body. Your sugar's normal. You taste the sweet device, the sugar's coming, spike the insulin. You spike your, and this is my what I think happened. Spike your insulin, sugars go low, you're hungry. No one loses weight on Diet Coke. It doesn't happen, right? Because a lot of obese people are drinking Diet Coke. They're not getting skinny doing that. So we don't know yet. I think what we're waiting for, and they're working on is a continuous insulin monitor. We have continuous glucose monitors, but people will debate that whether spiking the sugar makes a difference. But if you don't spike your sugar, but you're spiking your insulin, that's what we don't. We don't want to spike the insulin. That's why the whole point of low carb is keeping your insulin like this. So if we're taking stuff all day. Plus, Dr. Saiva's episode number 10, Low Carb MD. Again, I'm telling you, he says it's like an alcoholic drinking O'Doul's. Sooner or later, you're going to drink it. If you keep drinking that, and you want to have that. So there's
psychological
factor.
Behavior modification.
Just like with alcohol, I have patients who are alcoholics or have had struggles with alcohol. They quit for 2 years. They can have 1 drink a week and they're okay. Others have one and they're going to drink for a month straight without stopping, right? And it depends on you and your body. So the point is, if it keeps you from going, it's like methadone, right? We take people off heroin, we put them on methadone. But then they're on methadone the rest of their life. Okay, what do we accomplish? Nothing. Because the whole point is to wean off of that. So over time, naturally what happens is people lose that taste for food because your sense, and we have studies showing this, that your things taste way sweeter. I had strawberries one day at my office. I was like, oh my gosh, these are the best strawberries I've ever had. They're like, those are just like from Costco, regular strawberries. And to them it was not sweet because they're eating chocolate and cake all day. So when you look at it, Tro Kalasian, who I'm doing the podcast with, talks about hyper-palatable foods. And that's the point is, if I tell you, okay, look, you can never have broccoli again, you're like, okay. But I would say, no more sourdough bread ever. No more chips and salsa ever. Then your like brain's like, oh my gosh. People cry. Dr. Unwin says people cry in his office because they're like, I can't have bread. What am I going to do? But broccoli, you don't really care, right? Because there's an addictive potential of all this stuff.
So I have a spectrum of clients, and some who have stronger sweet tooths use sweeteners like stevia, erythritol, monk fruit, and they continue to have that sweet tooth. And then I have clients that, for either a therapeutic reason or another reason, we cut out all the artificial sweeteners, and their palate becomes more sensitive. To the point where one client, he was, cutting his calories too deeply, and he was strength training and started to lose muscle. So we experimented with exogenous ketones that had artificial sweetener, and he couldn't drink it because it was too sweet. So he had a sensitivity. He had trained him. His body had acclimated itself to being a very low, sweet-tasting diet, and then the natural, like a blueberry or a one strawberry, was very sweet to him, whereas stevia was just off the charts. So,
and I think that's the difference with the low-carb and ketogenic diet. What happens is you lose that craving. You're not, people like say they feel like they just went to a buffet and they're not hungry. They see people eating donuts, they go, man, it looks good, but I'm not. It's not like I'm gonna use all my willpower to do this, right? When you're starving on a low-calorie diet, that's how you are. People are miserable and they're like, oh, shouldn't I get a cookie? I'm gonna get one, right? Or I'll just have a little piece of that, and I'll have a little piece of that, right? People don't smoke one pack of cigarettes at a time; they smoke one at a time all day long. And that's what we do. We pick and we have, oh, I'll just have some of this, I'll have a little of that, and then you realize, oh my gosh, at the end of the day. So for me as a doctor, about a year ago, I came across Sean Baker, who's another doctor, who's an orthopedic surgeon, who's carnivore. All he eats is meat. No vegetables, no fruit, meat. I'm like, this guy's a nut. He's going to die, right? I don't say it out loud because he's 6'7", weighs 270 pounds, and he's 100% muscle. He went and got a coronary calcium score, 0. 0 coronary disease, 52 years old, but he eats more meat in 1 year than I would eat in 25 years. And he has 0 coronary. But the point he's making, and I asked him, he's on episode 5 of my podcast, but I asked him, hey, how come you don't eat vegetables? What's the problem? He said, I just don't like them. And I like fruit, but if I eat fruit, my sugars go crazy, so I don't eat fruit. So I eat meat, right? He goes, maybe someday I'll add some fruit back in. Maybe I don't care, whatever. I'll figure it out, whatever I like. But a lot of people do that as an elimination diet. I'm doing more of a carnivore diet right now as an elimination because I have food allergies, right? So get rid of all this stuff, and then you add stuff back in and figure out what it is. I'm not going to do it permanently, but it's saying, okay, I'm getting it. If you're allergic to peanuts, and I say, keep eating peanuts, and here I'll give you Benadryl every day. It's like, you don't eat peanuts, you don't need the dang medicine, right?
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So I don't have a question, but I just want to thank both of you and acknowledge you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I want to know if you monitor the magnesium level of your patient's blood.
I'm a huge believer in magnesium replacement. I mean, in ketogenic diet, low carb, magnesium replacement is important. With metformin, B12 deficiency is a huge issue, so you have to replace B12. Vitamin D deficiencies. It's funny because the first question this guy asked me as a nutrition guy, he says, oh my gosh, ketogenic diet, what are you going to do about all the vitamin deficiencies? I'm like, all the vitamin deficiencies we see are fat soluble. So if you're a higher fat diet, you have much less of those, but we don't have a problem. People don't have scurvy. Let me deal with scurvy around here. So magnesium, I'll tell you, from personal experience, I've had, as a matter of fact, Dr. Grant, the chiropractor, told me about it a long time ago, but I've had people, helps calm the nerves, helps with asthma, helps with palpitations, helps with muscle cramp. Yeah, muscle cramping, all those things. So I have people, one of my good friends as a ER doc was having tons of palpitations. He's an ultra marathon guy. And And he wanted me to send him to a cardiologist. I said, you're wasting your time. You're super fit. Your heart's fine. It's probably just life stress and adrenaline rushes. And he doesn't eat, bad stuff. But anyways, I said, here, try magnesium while you're waiting. So I see him 2 weeks later. I said, hey, what happened with the cardiologist? Because I gave him the cardiologist number. He said, I'm not talking to you right now. I said, why not? He said, your stupid magnesium powder. I like the magnesium powder. Natural Calm is the one I use for a lot of people. Palpitation went away. He goes, I drank 2 Red Bulls. I ran coffee. I did all this stuff. And he was magnesium deficient. That was the whole problem. It wasn't a drug deficiency. It was a magnesium deficiency. So yeah, magnesium's a really good supplement.
What I read says that most of the 65% of all people are short on magnesium.
At least, and the problem is our blood. I don't even check for it anymore because if you're symptomatic, constipation is a huge problem with magnesium deficiency. So people add magnesium. You take too much, it definitely cures that problem, right? But people take it for anxiety, sleep, sleeping through the night. But you're right. But the problem is 99.5% is in your tissues. Like very little is in your bloodstream. So we're looking in the blood for something. You're gonna be super deficient by the time we find it in the blood. And plus, we'll see potassium levels will drop down, and they won't come back up until you give magnesium. Then it comes right up. They work together.
So what are some of the symptoms of being low on magnesium?
Yeah, just like I said, palpitations, constipation, stress, insomnia, muscle cramps.
Yeah, everybody.
Back spasms.
Everybody
It
has
helps with asthma.
We're all
Helps with a ton
magnesium
of stuff.
deficient.
Yeah. Most people are. It's the limiting thing is you're going to get the runs if you take too much of it. That's about it.
Guess what, Brian?
And there's topical magnesium that you do, right?
Yes, topical, yes.
Yeah, and that bypasses the
And
GI
mineral
stuff.
oil. Mhm.
Yeah.
It's, go ahead.
Honey.
I bought a jar of magnesium, I think it's 4 milligrams. And it's in a little hard pill. Should I throw it away and go buy the Natural Calm that you're talking about, or is it okay?
Well, it depends if you're having symptoms. It's probably better. You're going to absorb it a lot better. I've had
4
I've seen some-
milligrams not gonna do anything.
Yeah, probably not gonna do it. Yeah, I would do the natural. You make it like a little tea. You fill up your glass halfway. Your glass has to be half full or half empty, depends on how you look at the world. But you put hot water in there, you put in there, it's gonna fizz up like a science experiment, go back down, then you can add more water to it. Otherwise, it'll overflow on everything.
Guess what, Brian? It's 9 o'clock. It's past my bedtime. We can talk all night. But it's past John's bedtime up there. He's sleeping. Pastor John.
Yeah, we don't
Sorry.
If you have one more question, we do that.
See you tomorrow, hopefully.
Can I ask one more?
Yes.
So we're just looking into this to get started, actually. Actually, I work for the Stecklers, and county's been filling my brain. So I just want to know, dietdoctor.com, is that maybe the best place for us to go to just become familiar with the fasting and what to eat?
If you want to do fasting, the world expert, in my opinion, is Jason Fung. He has a book called The Diabetes Code and the Obesity Code.
Okay.
Unbelievably good. I mean, that will explain all the stuff we're talking about. Diet Doctor is a great resource. There's a ton of, all you got to do now, if you want to make something, say put keto, broccoli, keto, whatever, and there's tons of recipes out there. There's tons of great books. There's one called Everyday Keto Cooking that I like a lot. That has tons of great, easy recipes that you can make.
Well, watch for the additives, because Tammy and I just found a new book that has some great recipes, but there's an additives. You can also come into it for a free assessment. There's all these free resources.
Yeah, she gave me your card and told me to show me.
There you go. So we can do your body fat. You can determine your resting metabolic rate. We can start to get you moving, and you can come to these meetings. They're monthly free meetings where you can meet and collaborate and
Join the
network.
community.
Yes, join the
You get a
community.
lot of support.
So, and this is meeting in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks, is that right?
No, what are you meeting again? 2 weeks here, right?
No. This is only one meeting here. So
Tom's
originally,
going to kick us out right now.
originally it was going to be 5 different meetings. We're gonna revisit meeting here more frequently in the summer, but we don't have this venue, but only tonight. So our next meeting is
Probably just the one line.
our next meeting is February 16th, and then next week at the center.
February 16th is at the gym again.
Yes, at the Tri System Center.
Oh my
We'll
gosh.
have some food there this time again, right?
Very good.
Do I cut it off?
For all you do, man. I appreciate you, man. We'll see you.
From the Gregor,
Thanks.